Once upon a time, there was a kind woodcutter. He lived in a small hut. He worked hard every day. He chopped wood and sold it in the village. The woodcutter was very old. His back was bent. His hair was white. He was tired all the time. He wished he was young again.
One day I was chopping wood in the forest. I heard a beautiful song. It was coming from a small blue bird. The bird flew from tree to tree. I followed it. I wanted to hear its song up close.
The bird led the woodcutter deep into the forest. He had never been to this part of the forest before. The trees were taller here, the flowers were brighter. Finally, the bird landed on a rock. The woodcutter stopped to catch his breath. He looked around. He saw a small spring. It sparkled in the sunlight. The water was so clear it looked like liquid silver. The bird dipped its wings in the water, then it flew away. The woodcutter was thirsty. He walked to the spring. He cupped his hands and drank some water. The water was cool and refreshing. Suddenly the woodcutter felt different. He felt stronger. He looked at his hands. They weren't wrinkled anymore. He looked in the spring. He saw his reflection. He was young again. The spring was magical. The woodcutter ran back to his hut. He was so excited. He told his wife everything. His wife didn't believe him at first. Then she saw him. He really was young again.
I want to be young too.
They went back to the magical spring together. She drank from the water. Just like that, she was young again. The woodcutter and his wife kept the spring a secret. They didn't want anyone else to know about it. But one day, their neighbor saw them. The neighbor was a greedy old man. He saw how young the woodcutter and his wife looked. He asked them how they did it.
How did you do it? How did you become so young?
At first they didn't want to tell him, but the old man begged and pleaded.
Please, you must tell me. I need to know.
Finally they told him about the magical spring. The greedy old man ran to the forest. He found the spring. He was so excited. He didn't even stop to think. He drank and drank from the spring. He wanted to be as young as possible. He drank until he couldn't drink anymore. The old man felt strange. He was dizzy. He laid down under a tree. He closed his eyes and fell asleep. The woodcutter and his wife were worried. They went into the forest to look for the old man. They found him sleeping under the tree. They tried to wake him up, but he wouldn't wake up. They looked closer. Something was different. The old man's clothes were too big. He was curled up inside them. He looked just like a baby.
Look, my love, his clothes are too big for him.
Oh my, he looks just like a baby.
The woodcutter and his wife were shocked. They didn't know what to do. They couldn't just leave the baby in the forest. They picked him up and took him home. They decided to raise him as their own son.
We can't leave him here. Let's take him home.
Yes, we'll raise him as our own.
The woodcutter and his wife learned a valuable lesson that day. They learned that greed can have unexpected consequences, but they also learned that even in the darkest of times, there is always hope and the possibility of a new beginning.